Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you a mid-September garden tour. So let's go. I'm starting the tour on the south side of my house, and you can see behind me that my hydrangea is in its glory. This is a quick fire hydrangea. I've had it for a number of years, and to be honest with you, I've never really pruned it back. Next year, I am planning on pruning it back really hard, so be on the lookout for that video, because pruning your hydrangeas can really create a nice forming bush later in the season. I just love the way that this hydrangea is looking this time of year, with its rosy pink blossoms on it, and it still has plenty of flower buds on it, and it's going to be putting on a great display for the next many weeks. You can see that I have not just one, but two of these type of hydrangeas right here, and they both are looking equally as beautiful. And right next to the second quickfire hydrangea, I have another panicle hydrangea. I'm going to bring you over there so we can take a closer look. Isn't this color just gorgeous? I think it's so pretty. And this type of hydrangea is called vanilla strawberry. And I've had it for about 5 years. Again, I've never pruned it, and it has become quite large. I just am really enjoying it. As we leave the area where the hydrangeas are, we have a long but narrow flower bed that pretty much gets full sun, and there is some pretty colors going on in this flower bed as well. The echinacea, or coneflowers, is starting to go by, and the birds have really been feasting on their seeds. And you can see the black-eyed Susan, or Rebecca. The spotted leaves there, that's called lungwort, or pulmonaria. And the blue-colored flowers that you see, that's a native here, and that is called the great blue lobelia. The bees definitely enjoy the great blue lobelia, and that's the key. You want to make sure you have lots of plants in your yard for all the pollinators. My Stella d'Oro daylilies continue to put out blooms. After all, it is a reblooming variety of daylily. One thing I plan to do next year to keep it looking tidier is I'm going to be cutting it right down to the ground after its first flush of blooms sometime in late June, early July. And that will just make for a tidier plant. It's really nice having those pops of pink as well as purples and blues and yellows this time of year in the garden. As with many other areas of my yard, this flower bed will be seeing a lot of changes next year, so be on the lookout for that. So many people that visit my home comment on the fringed bleeding heart because of its leaves, the fact that it's still blooming as we enter the fall months. I really think it's such a beautiful plant to have. And right next to it, I have some of the white begonias. I collected the seeds off of all the annuals you're going to see in my yard. And they just look so pretty. They're doing so well in this area of my yard. And right behind it, a taller pink plant. It has a few blossoms on it. That is a vinca. And those are still looking pretty. They did put on a much better show a few weeks ago, but they are adding some height and some color in this area of my garden. And I'm really loving this because this is what you notice when you come up my driveway. And then right on the other side of this is some more of the fringed bleeding heart. And there are some pink colors as well as some white colors. And again, having all of these plants here adds some interest, they add some color, and the bees, the pollinators, are really enjoying the flowers. And as you peek over this way, you'll notice that there are some black-eyed Susans or Rebecca that are just starting to go by. And then just beyond that is a type of hydrangea. Now, I don't know the variety of hydrangea. I've had it for a number of years. If you know what variety of hydrangea this is, I'd love to know. Please drop it down in the comment section below. Fall arrives this weekend, and you can see the leaves are just starting to fall. Here up along my driveway, I have a number of hanging baskets. I rely heavily on adding color around my yard using annuals. I love having the color spring, summer into the fall months, and it's a very budget-friendly way of adding color to your yard. I bought these hanging baskets from Ocean State Job Lot, and then I replace the liners every few years. The planters or hanging baskets are filled with impatiens, which are an annual that I started from seed. There is some lamium, and that's a perennial here where I live. And I just think it adds a little bit of whimsy, a little bit of color as you come up my driveway. Here is a flower bed that we worked on in the past. There are some heuchera around the tree there. We also have impatiens as well as coleus that were also started from seed. Towards the center of the flower bed, there is a type of carex. I'm almost sure it's called feather falls. And that's a perennial here. And I had only bought one plant, and I just divided it over time. And then we have another hydrangea here, and this is the vanilla strawberry. It gets a lot of shade here, so it doesn't perform as well, but it still does add a nice pop of color. I just wanted to show a close-up shot of this hanging basket. The lamium is definitely very happy right here, as well as the impatiens. I had added some alyssum that I started from seed as well, and you can see it just barely popping through here. I've been making a lot of videos lately showing you my process for collecting seeds from lots of plants, including the impatiens. I'll be sure to link a lot of these type of videos that you might be interested in down in the description below. And draping down from this hanging basket is a perennial called creeping Jenny. It is considered invasive here in New Hampshire, but I keep it in check in certain areas of my yard because I do like to include it in a lot of my containers and pots. We've had a very dry summer. I'm constantly watering these container pots, but it's so worth it. Up my driveway on the right is a plant nursery. I've been really busy dividing plants and adding plants to the plant nursery to get it ready for next year. I'm making a lot of progress, which I'm very happy about. I'll be working on this plant nursery for the next many weeks so that the plants can really establish their root systems before next year. Here we are at what I call the side walkway bed. You can see that the Joe Pye weed is just starting to go by, but it's adding a nice rosy blush color here in the late season. And there's a beautiful type of grass right next to it, ornamental grass. Pretty soon that's going to be sending out feathery plumes that we can enjoy later in the season. At the base of the Joe Pye weed are a perennial mum. They've been here for a few years now, and I had shown you in previous videos how to overwinter mums as well as how to prune your mums so that they have a nice short habit to them. Because a lot of times with perennial mums, if you don't prune them mid-season, they become very leggy. And this is looking so beautiful. You can see the color of it, and probably in another week it's going to put on a wonderful show. Right near that mum, I had planted a bunch of other perennial mums that I bought recently. So the goal is to have those overwinter next year, get larger, so that we can then divide those and move those around the yard. Here is another perennial mum that I also had planted here a few years ago and pruned back sometime in June, I believe. It just looks so healthy, so beautiful. And then what looks really beautiful as well are these dianthus. I rely heavily on dianthus as a border plant in this flower bed. It put on a wonderful show earlier in the season, and then I showed you how to cut it back, how to prune it back really hard so that it looks like a nice ground cover. And it looks really pretty, but what I also am enjoying are the little spurts of color that the plants are giving this time of year. Can you believe that I had only bought one of each kind of these 3 different dianthus? That's a dianthus as well, in case you're wondering. A different kind, but it is a dianthus. I only had one of each kind, and over the years, I have divided these and moved them along. Dividing your plants is so important. That ensures for a healthier plant. But not only that, it allows you to have more plants in your yard or to share with others. I have a few annuals that self-sowed themselves in here. We have a white colored cosmos, and then we also have an orange colored calendula. And I need to come in and start collecting more seeds from these plants. With the calendula, I really want to move that around my yard in different areas of the yard. If I sow those seeds now, the plants will come up next year, which is always a nice surprise. We are still on the south side of my house. This flower bed right here is what I call the old arborvitae bed. The reason is, when we first bought the house, there used to be 3 arborvitae that were in this bed. They did not do well. I didn't know how to care for them. They got very big over time. I had never pruned or cut them, and so we decided to pull them out. After we pulled those arborvitae out, we added a whole bunch of compost in here, as well as drip irrigation. And then we jam-packed it with perennials as well as annuals. And I love the way that it has come out. There is white alyssum, there is a trailing blue lobelia, lots of coleus. I'm letting my coleus go to seed so I can collect the seeds from them, and that's why I'm leaving the flower stalks on there in case you're wondering. There are a lot of different types of coleus in here. There is vinca, and what I've noticed about the vinca is the vinca does really well in this flower bed. Towards the center of the flower bed are perennials. We have a ground cover, that's ajuga, the black scallop ajuga. There is also candy tuft, barely tucked in, and it's also throughout this bed. And then there are a bunch of small leaf rhododendrons. They are here temporarily because I'm basically trying to get them to put on some growth, and then eventually when they get a little bit bigger, I will move those small leaf rhododendrons to a different part of my flower gardens. But I have really, truly enjoyed this flower bed. We have some more Joe Pye weed on this side of the flower bed. And at the base here is another mum that I'm trying to overwinter so that I can get it to come back next year. And right near this flower bed is my side porch. There are a bunch of annuals that are just looking so beautiful in here. And there are also some perennials at the base. It's amazing just by adding a few plants in here, what a difference it can make in a container pot like this. On the other side of my porch here is another container pot. I've been collecting a lot of seeds from this coleus. I had bought the seeds for this coleus from Baker Creek a while ago. It's called Colocha Rose. It's one of my favorites, and I want to grow more of this coleus next year. I will be changing up my side porch to be more in tune with the fall months, so be on the lookout for that. I do have some pots of basil here. I've collected a lot of seeds from the basil, so pretty soon I'm going to have to pull these basil out. And I have some really beautiful window boxes on the other side of the porch here. You'll see I use a lot of repeating plants in my yard because these are just plants that I had on hand that I either started from seed or they're perennials from my gardens. Although this vining plant right here, this is a type of lysimachia. I'm not sure if it's a perennial here where I live. I had collected some cuttings last year, and then I was able to propagate those cuttings. So this year what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to save more cuttings, just keep them in my garage, and I'm also going to put some out in my landscape on the south side of my house, up next to the house, and I'll see if this plant will overwinter for me. Here on the east side of my house, you can see that it's very shady. It gets extremely shady on the north as well as the east side of my house. I have a lot of hosta. I haven't had a chance to come out here and cut back the spent blooms, and that's quite fine. I'm still enjoying how pretty this hosta garden is looking. We have lots of hanging baskets here that line the trees. At the base of the trees there are lots of mini hosta, and this impatiens, I need to collect the seeds from it. It's a little different than all the other ones I have. I specifically bought the seeds for this impatiens last year. It's really pretty, so I'm definitely going to collect the seeds from this. We're now heading to my backyard, and you can see I rely very heavily on the impatiens as well as the begonia. And this time of year, the leaves are going to be falling pretty quickly now, and that's part of living in the woods. That's part of living here in New England. I really enjoy it. It's all part of nature, and I love to collect the leaves actually and shred them up and create a lot of compost with these leaves. Just a little bit of color in this flower bed here. This is where the lawn ends and the woods begin. And it's just something that I continue to experiment with when it comes to perennials as well as annuals. We have creeping phlox that blooms in the springtime. And then I had put a bunch of wax begonias here. They took a while to take off because they got added very late in the season, but they actually are adding a lot of nice color now, which I'm really enjoying. I have some window boxes on my back porch that are looking very pretty. Right near my back porch is a rose garden, and I have a bunch of different roses in here. The yellow flowers that you are noticing, those are an annual. They're called bidens, and they had dropped their seeds everywhere. And I think I have a love-hate relationship with them. They are very leggy. Maybe if I cut them back, they wouldn't be so leggy. But I also do enjoy the yellow color this time of year. I think it's just so pretty next to the other colors that you see in this flower bed. The roses are still putting on blooms, and in hindsight, I wish I had cut them a few more times in terms of pruning. I had only pruned them once, and I probably should have kept up with that. The rusty water does hit the leaves, so it discolors them a little bit, but that's quite okay. In the center there, the white color, those are a lot of wax begonias. And then I have some annuals also, just like the wax begonias, that are purple, and those are salvias. They actually self-sowed, and they were late to bloom, but that's okay. I'm really enjoying their color now. I'd love to have more of those, so I'll definitely be collecting the seeds of them and starting those from seed. This rose right here I got from my sister-in-law's home, and her rose does the same thing that mine does. It always sends off these huge canes. I'm almost wondering if it's meant to be a climbing rose. I'm considering moving this and putting it up next to some sort of a trellis, because no matter how many times I cut it back, it always sends off all these very large canes, which indicates to me I think it's a climbing rose. Most of the roses in here are either drift roses or knockout roses. And the knockout roses that you're seeing right now, like this one over here, these came from my mother-in-law's home. So they're very special and meaningful to me. This area is not very big, but it's big enough for a rose garden. And it used to actually house an above-ground swimming pool that my children used when they were younger. So I felt like it was a nice use of space once we removed that swimming pool. And you can't see it, but in the springtime, there were a ton of daffodils that bloomed in this little garden space. So it's always nice to have succession of flowers from spring through the fall months. And right near the rose garden is a small raised vegetable garden. We have planted green beans, the bush variety, a few times this season, and we've enjoyed them. And then we did another succession, and I was a little worried that maybe it was a little too late. But you can see that the beans do have blooms on them. So hopefully we should be getting beans before you know it. And right behind the beans are asparagus. I had shown you recently how to collect the seeds from an asparagus plant. I still need to come out here and collect more seeds. If I don't do that, what will happen is all these seeds will drop, and I will have a lot of volunteer asparagus plants, which I'm not complaining about. If that happens, that's okay. I can always dig them up and share them as part of my backyard plant nursery. But for right now, the key is to leave those ferny leaves on there so that it continues to feed my asparagus plants for next year. Look at all those berries. Each berry has 2 or more seeds inside of them. Isn't that amazing? The cucumbers are slowing down. After all, our nighttime temperatures are typically in the 40-degree Fahrenheit range now. So this will be probably the last of the harvesting when it comes to my cucumbers. But we really did enjoy them quite a bit this year. We're on the west side of my house, and in this flower bed here, we had done quite a bit of work to it. And one thing that we did was we added some sedum. They are pretty small right now, but nevertheless, I really am enjoying their blooms. We have the autumn joy sedum, and then we also have some variety of a variegated sedum over here. I had just bought this last year, and then I divided it this year. So it's always nice and easy to divide your sedums. I did have the red cardinal flower here, and I love that plant. It has started to go to seed, so I'll be collecting the seeds from these plants soon enough. And then here on the other side of this flower bed are more of those same sedum. Although, interestingly enough, check out the color difference with the sedum here. I can't explain it other than maybe I made a mistake and this variety here is different than the others. I'm not quite sure. I didn't buy these plants. I just dug them from another area of my yard and moved them. I don't know. I love them all equally. But you have to admit that color right there is quite striking. Here's another smaller type of hydrangea. I believe it's similar to one that's near my plant nursery. I don't have the variety. Many times when I buy plants, I buy them from a backyard plant nursery. So I'm not quite sure what variety this is. If you know, definitely please drop it down in the comment section. But it really is looking beautiful. I just added it here last year, so it's still quite small. Small but mighty. I call this flower bed the lilac flower bed because there's a lilac tree in the center there. This bed has changed so many times over the last many years, but I wanted to show you that there is a perennial mum that's down here. I got these mums a number of years ago from my mother-in-law's house, and they're really pretty. You can see they're going to be like a yellow color. I did cut them back one time, but based on their growth habit, I believe that they're a type of mum that I really should be cutting back a number of times during the year. So I'll have to be mindful of that. In this bed, there are more sedum that I added. There is some alyssum, also some impatiens, more begonias, and then you can just see more of the mums that are all budded up here. In this flower bed, I also added a bunch of asters, and I've divided and moved those over the years. So you can see that those are also budded up. Perennial mums as well as perennial asters are a great plant to have for late summer, early fall interest. The key with the mums is making sure you get them into your landscape early enough. And the first year that you plant them, do not cut them back. Just let them be and cut them back in the springtime. And I made a video going over the whole process of what I do to get my mums to come back every year. Next spring, I definitely want to come in and divide and move a bunch of my mums around the yard. That is a top priority for me. Right there, another aster. Lots of aster in this bed. I basically have them in between the mums. Here on the west side of my house, which is also my front yard, there are just a lot of annuals. And I showed you this angle earlier, but you can see that this is where I have a lot of those impatiens and a lot of those coleus. There are some begonias. And they've done really well here. I'm very happy. This is my first time planting this many impatiens in the landscape. I'll definitely be doing that again next year. Here we are at the front of my house. I call this flower bed the bay window flower bed because that bedroom right there has a bay window in it. I have a trellis that I added here. Later in the season, I found a stray morning glory that was in this flower bed. So I dug it up, I moved it here, and I'm really enjoying the little pops of color that it's adding in this flower bed. In fact, I need to come in here and continue pulling it up this way so I can keep climbing up this trellis. But isn't that pretty? I love morning glories, and it's really hit or miss every year if I get to planting them in my yard. But when I see them this time of year blooming, I wonder, why didn't I plant more? The perennial cranesbill geranium continue to put out flushes of color. Just like my roses, my plan for next year is to prune or cut back these perennial geraniums more than once. I only did it one time this year, and I'm regretting it now because it seems like they really could have benefited from being pruned back one more time. That's okay. Whatever blooms they are pushing out, I'm thoroughly enjoying. These guys are all budded up. This is montauk daisy. I feel like if you want to have interest in the fall time in your garden, you should have perennial mums, you should definitely have asters, and you should have montauk daisy. Now, montauk daisy, just like the mums as well as the asters, can benefit from being cut back or pruned back once, if not twice, during the growing season. I did cut these back once. Next year, I'll be cutting them back more than once. They are really, really easy to propagate in cuttings. So when you cut them back, why not take those cuttings and propagate them? I'll definitely make an update video showing you what these daisies look like when they're blooming. But boy, they're just so pretty, and I love having them in this flower bed. Right near the bay window flower bed is my front porch, and also a pond that we installed a number of years ago. I love my impatiens. I just love how they fill out that area. And I want to go even heavier next year with my impatiens. My yard just has so much shade that it's really to my benefit to pack it with lots of impatiens. And there's more of that lysimachia flanking the bottom of those pots. There are also a bunch of begonias. You'll see constantly the same plants because for when it came to my annuals that I started from seed, for me it made sense to grow a lot of shade-loving plants. But right there it gets a little bit of sun, which is why I grew a lot of the vinca from seed. And then we have a ton of mini or miniature hosta. A lot of people say to me that they didn't know that you could buy such a variety. Absolutely you can. The key is if you're going to buy it, you want to put it somewhere where you can really enjoy them, where they're not going to get lost. And even though they've dropped their seeds and can be a little bit weedy, right here are English daisies that I winter sowed a number of years ago. And honestly, I do think they're very sweet. They bloomed very heavily in the spring months, and then they took a break, and now they're starting to bloom again. Up along the front of my walkway are the trailing lobelia as well as alyssum, and then vinca. And in the pots are dahlias that I started from seed a number of years ago, but then I have been collecting and storing their tubers each season. Dahlias are maintenance, I'm not gonna lie. I am constantly coming out here and deadheading them, but it's so worth it because the more you deadhead them, the more they will bloom for you. And just look how pretty they are. And look at the color on this one. Just so beautiful. I really love my dahlias, and next year I need to get more of them put out in the pots and landscape. I had started a bunch of tubers. I just didn't get them all planted out. They're still in their pots that I pre-sprouted them in. But next year, that's definitely one of my goals, is to get them out in the landscape. I'm also planning to sell a bunch of dahlias as well as annuals as part of my backyard plant nursery next year. There was a lot of interest in that. And here's really pretty white dahlia. And then we're going to end the video with this gorgeous dahlia that I'm absolutely loving. It's just so pretty. It's a taller variety, and look at how fluffy it is. I really hope you enjoyed this garden tour. It is the middle of September, and even though I live in New Hampshire, Zone 5B, we can get a frost anytime during the next month. There is still a lot of beauty in this garden, and I can't stress enough, perennials are wonderful, but don't forget to add those annuals. Annuals get expensive. I totally get that. But that's why I make so many videos showing you how to collect your own seeds from annuals, how to start your own seeds, and then how to plant them in the landscape as well as care for them during the growing season. So definitely be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so that you can follow along and hopefully learn from my videos. As always, if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.